Another awesome video from Arcade Dude 44.
Hello YouTube, Arcade Dude 44. I'm Greg here again at Classic Gaming Expo 2012 here in Las Vegas. And I'd like to take time now, here's a video I promised you. We're going to hit the Video Game History Museum. Very cool site. These are actually the three guys that put together this awesome show. So let's go ahead and go in and I'll just point out notable things. So as we come in to the left, right here, we have this puppy pong. Right here in the front, a really rare item. This was actually a puppy pong. So this was made to be a kid-friendly version of Pong back in the day, to sit in maybe dentist's office and places like that. Kind of put the kids at bay, relax them a little bit, let them play some vintage video gaming. And this one's actually appears to be signed on Bushnell Al Acorn. Very cool. So we come right over here to a really nice looking display, an Atari home computer demo system or kiosk. We have an Atari 800 in there. It looks like it's actually got something running in there. So a little demo, very cool. And we'll come right down the line. An Odyssey 1, way back when my wife and I were a year old. This thing came out in '72. Probably the first home gaming system. The cartridges were in these very long PC boards, basically, you would insert. So we've come a long way, that's for sure. And a lot of this is self-explanatory. Obviously an Odyssey 2 with a voice add-on. Fairchild's Channel F and RCA Studio 2. Various Pong consoles and stuff. This Coleco Telstar arcade that Ralph Baer actually was contracted to work on for Coleco. So, Bally Astrocades right here. And Arcadia came a little later. And an Atari Pong game here with some of the cartridges that would go into it, kind of a precursor to the Atari VCS. Okay, after the Atari Brain with the Pong cartridges, I guess my wife had that when she was a kid, so that's really cool. Okay folks, here we have an Atari Cosmos, a pre-production unit. So in 1981 at the International Consumer Electronics Show, they were actually awarded this little plaque of recognition for this item. Unfortunately, it never saw the light of day. It was basically a 3D holographic imaging system of sorts that never came to light. Key Games 2600, this was actually for the Japanese market. And this was a... Hey guys! Okay, and this here is a Key Games 2600 pre-production unit for the Japanese market. Notice, obviously, right away, the very loud color palette that was most likely deemed too expensive to produce. So that one never saw light of day either. These were little laptop versions of, for the time, basically a laptop 2600, little CX2000 models. So, very rare oddity. And here we have an Atari VCS, years before it was actually known as a 2600. It was the video computer system. Here's an official 6-switch. Here we have a heavy sixer system. Actually, it's not a heavy sixer. You'd know that by the sides are a little thinner. This is when it first got outsourced to Hong Kong. The actual Sunnyvale produced heavy sixers have the thicker siding on them. But anyways, this is an original Atari video computer system VCS, circa 1977. Here we have the first knockoffs, if you will, the Coleco Gemini, which there was, you know the stories, if you don't, you can look it up really easily on Google. There was a lawsuit involved, and Coleco ultimately won, so there you go. Here we have a very rare prototype. It's an Atari 2700. This was basically a very late 2600 that never saw the light of day. It's notable because of the wireless controllers well ahead of their time, but it never saw production. So we'll just kind of move along some of these other items here. And of course an original 4-port 5200. Here was a 5100, basically a chopped down 5200 without the controller storage in the back. Again, prototype. And a prototype 7800 by CGE, produced for Atari. And the little translucent design there. The 7800 keyboard that never came out. Prototypes for that as well. Here's something really cool. You all know, or you will, that I love arcade games. That's my true passion. And here we have the granddaddy of them all, Computer Space. So, very cool stuff. From Nutting Associates, later, of course, Atari. It was what that company was.
Hey, game.
Okay, and here we have the early Atari computers. I see an Atari 800, some of the very large disk drives. We'll come right around, and it just kind of moves up to the Atari, newer Atari computers. Come over here real quick. Basic reproduction card systems, Spectre video system, some early artwork for various Atari games. Many of them didn't see the light of day.
The first system that's supposed to read your mind. I think it's. You just had one or two prototypes of that.
Various awards from trade shows. As you can see, the awards just go on and on for video games, which is very nice to get industry recognition for such an important media. Video games were so popular in the early 80s, Milton Bradley kind of wanted to jump on board with board games. Maybe you couldn't afford video games. Well, the family could still gather around and play a board game version. In many ways, of course, nothing like the arcade, but still cool stuff. And like we have today, there was a lot of clothing items, game-related as well. And what do you know, a lunchbox, the greatest game ever made. See, it didn't have to actually be a video game to be video game related. Lots of books, board games, and everything else, apparel on the subject. Here we have an Atari Lynx prototype, Game Boy Color prototypes, Sega Dev, basically development Genesis system. Here, a 7800 prototype and artwork for that system. Very cool games. Unfortunately, didn't see the light of day. Some Intellivision games that never came out. Revenge of the Jedi, notice that. Early name for the Return of the Jedi movie that was scrapped and changed. Here we have various early handheld systems and proms. A lot of patches. A lot of these could actually be earned by sending in a Polaroid snapshot of your high score. That's how you get a lot of these items. And a lot of it was promotional material as well, like Tri-ColecoVision, that kind of stuff. And now we're coming up on this wall is some of the newer, still vintage of course, Atari computers. And an awesome neon sign. Very nice there. And we'll come back to the tables over here. Various displays for some games. Starpath Supercharger. I do have one of those. Unfortunately, my games aren't in the box, but you'll be seeing that in the game room once it's set up. Various controllers. Very nice Tron from the M Network controller. There's actually one of those new in box at this show. Unfortunately, it's too rich for my blood. And Magic Previewer, a very cool item where for actual in-store displays, you could actually select games and use them and actually play them. Here we're getting into the Intellivision section, very cool stuff. Again, some more development games that didn't see the light of day. Some very rare ones. The Intellivision keyboard, or music synthesizer. It was, you notice it's styled after the later Intellivision 2 system. A smaller, more compact system with membrane controls, a different membrane control I should say, and actual detachable 9-pin DIN ports just like Atari used. They weren't compatible, but it was the same kind of control. Connection device, I should say. And here we have various stages of the Intellivision through its life cycle. All functional equivalent to each other, no change in the hardware, just different packaging basically. This one was running a demo yesterday. It's kind of a little demo cartridge. Very rare item here, only a handful of these exist. One went for auction yesterday too, not sure what it went for. An actual Intellivision keyboard component where it uses cassettes. Basically your Intellivision would connect into this and it becomes, for all intents and purposes, a computer. I believe there were only about 8 cassettes, actually software, produced for this system, and here they are pretty much. A lot of institutional items for education. Very cool posters. A large display for Mattel Soccer handheld. I believe that was playable too. Here we have a lot of games for the Sears Super Video Arcade. Much like it did with Atari, it was an Intellivision basically. Various storage items here for different systems. Bandai Electronics, actually Japanese Intellivision there. A French Intellivision. And another music synthesizer. And a little bit newer stuff, here's a PS2 kind of torn up. Exploded view, if you will. Game Boys, Game Boy Color. This is really cool, a Star Voyager model. This is the actual model that's photographed for this image. They actually, in these days, they'd actually build a physical model. And you can see by my hand the size of this thing. It's fairly large. And basically, they would actually hang this and blue screen it, whatever. And it's a physical model they used for the artwork. A lot different than the CGI stuff they do today. So here's just various little robots for the younger crowds back in the day. More kid-friendly devices. A little Game Boy kiosk, a Virtual Boy kiosk. And back to the wall, we see some more vintage computers. Software for the old Atari computers. And Atari XE system. Some beautiful artwork, old games, Warlord here. Some handheld stuff here. Again, we're going back to the 70s here with Motocross Sports Center 4, some Pong-type consoles, and then various storage, game selection devices, remote wireless joysticks, again, probably 2 decades ahead of their time for the Atari VCS. Here we have the Atari Lynx in various stages of development. Coming up on the Milton Bradley Microvision, one of the early handheld systems, and various software for that. And more different handhelds of various types. And continuing over here, still more handhelds. Of course, there were a lot of these. Actually picked up Electronic Football 2 at the show right here yesterday, so that'll be in the game room as well. And of course, more handhelds. Big part of vintage gaming. I mean, today we have our Game Boys. These are actually what those were born from. So it all starts somewhere, and a lot of these are really fun. Okay, I do remember this in early unit from the, I believe, the mid-70s. Omni Entertainment System actually used 8-track tapes for their software. And Adventure Vision with their little tiny cartridges. Yes, that was considered portable back in the day. And here we go. You'll find that I love the Vectrex system. This is something really cool. I really wish the video game crash wouldn't have happened around '83, that we may have actually seen this product in the market. It's an actual prototype. I believe it's one of one Vectrex color screen system. So it's actually, I'm not sure if there are any other hardware upgrades, but basically it actually had a color vector monitor installed, which would be really cool. No overlays needed, obviously. Here's the original handmade prototype. You'll notice the packaging, the case is actually a fiberglass. It's a foam with a fiberglass resin over it and not the production plastic. This filter for the high voltage for the flyback transformer to the CRT is actually a juice can that they covered with electrical tape. So that's really cool. Here we have a little mini kiosk for the production Vectrex that we all know. And this mini-cade was something that basically was designed for hotels and the like, where you could actually pay to play for a certain amount of time a Vectrex system. And on the back wall again, we'll see some Atari ST stuff here. Some nice artwork for Pitfall 2 for the computer version. And some more Intellivision stuff here on the back wall. And Othello artwork right there. Piece of artwork for Othello. And Mattel Aquarius, very short-lived computer system basically. And coming into one we all know, ColecoVision. Got an expansion module number 2 at the front, ColecoVision system, you know all this stuff. A ColecoVision Atom add-on. There came in 2 configurations. The add-on unit, such as this, would connect into the front of the ColecoVision expansion port, and the one like I have is a standalone. It's, for all intents and purposes, it's a built-in ColecoVision. Get into the TI computers, Texas Instruments. Spectre Video Computers. One of the first computers for the market from 1977, the Commodore PET. Got one of them. And of course, got a little more popular when it became the VIC-20. And of course, the Commodore 64, one of the most popular computers of all time. And this was considered a laptop or a portable computer back in the day. I believe it weighs quite a bit, over 20 pounds, I believe. And it's basically a 1541 disk drive with a little 5-inch CRT. Of course, this predates LCD monitors, so a little CRT in there, but it was color. It was really cool. SX64 is what that was. Later, the later Commodore 64 was 64C to match their product line to be more common with the 128, which was launched at the same time, and the smaller 3.5-inch disk drive. And then we get into the Commodore Amiga. By this time, Jack Tramiel left to Atari, and now it's different people designing these. But it was still a Commodore computer. We come into the Woz version of the Apple IIe and an Apple II Plus. And Dragon's Lair artwork back there as well. Again, very nice. And the Famicom computer, we all knew it as this here, Nintendo Entertainment System. This is actually much smaller than I thought it would be. If we can go to this real quick, I'll show it. The Famicom system's actually not that big, but these little controllers had an actual input for where you could blow into them, from what I understand, for certain games, like the DS had about 25 years later. Various NES systems. Rob, the rock operating buddy, worked in 2 games. A Famicom box, which in Japan, these would actually get installed in hotels, and it was basically an NES, including a light gun, and they'd have cartridges installed. You could basically select and play those. Early online system for the Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And this is all Super Nintendo item here, obviously. A Sega Master System, circa 1986. That's the power base, of course, the system. The 3D glasses, which I am fortunate enough to have a pair of. Again, I'll do a separate review on those once my room's set up. And, of course, Sega Genesis in its various incarnations here. TurboGrafx arcade board. Something to do with development, I believe. Here's a Pioneer Laser Active. These things are really cool. You could play Laserdisc movies, you could play Sega CD movies, Sega Genesis games, as well as TurboGrafx 16 games. It was kind of like an all-in-one deal. And various TurboGrafx 16 versions, PC Engine. Some cool posters back here. So here we have the Panther 32-bit system. It was in development at the same time as the Jaguar, which actually got released, 64-bit. In development together, however, the Jaguar was coming along so well, they ended up scrapping the Panther. So, let's see the Jaguar. Here's various designs for the kiosk for the system. Here we have the 3DO Panasonic version, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, PS1, and limited edition for the Elemental Gearbox Assassin's Case with a gold gun. For the Dreamcast, a very cool, now underrated system, Seaman game, came in the bizarre packaging. Leonard Nimoy actually did the voice for that game, which was really cool. And finally, a promotional Xbox, a Mountain Dew promo system. Well, folks, basically that's the Video Game History Museum. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know your comments. Thanks.
End of line.